If you want to understand the whole story of an empire, its rise, its fall, the whole shebang, you could read a bunch of books about its leaders or its biggest battles. Or you could do something a little different. You could follow the story of a single group of soldiers. And today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to trace the history of the British Empire and even the birth of Pakistan, all through the eyes of one absolutely remarkable military regiment.
So you might be wondering, how on earth can one little army unit tell the story of 170 years of history, of shifting borders, changing allegiances, and totally new identities? Well, it's because this regiment's journey is the story of the British in India, from the moment of conquest to their global power, all the way to that final chapter and the birth of a brand new nation. Their story is like a mirror reflecting the entire empire.
I mean, think about it. This is a unit that was literally born from the ashes of a conquered kingdom, a fighting force that became legendary, fighting for the British crown, only to one day lower that very flag and raise a totally new one for a new country. So let's dive in, right at the very beginning.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1849. The British have just conquered the Punjab region after some really brutal wars. And now they've got a huge problem. How do you control this massive territory filled with proud, incredibly skilled warriors? Well, their solution was radical and, frankly, super risky. They decided to hire the very same soldiers they had just been fighting against. And from that wild gamble, the 4th Punjab Infantry was born.
And here's the thing, they weren't just a regular army unit. No, they were what's called an irregular force. And that meant they just broke the mold. While the main British army was marching around in those famous bright red coats, this new regiment did something different. They adopted khaki, what they called drab, so they could blend into the dusty frontier. It was practical, it was innovative, and it was a huge sign that this was a totally different kind of fighting force.
And get this, look at who they actually recruited. These weren't fresh-faced kids, they were battle-hardened veterans from the Sikh army the British had just defeated. We're talking Pathans, elite Sikh soldiers. The British weren't just hiring men, they were basically absorbing an entire warrior culture. It was an incredibly audacious move, and it was all based on this very specific idea the British had about who these men were.
And this quote from their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Wilde, it tells you everything you need to know about that mindset. They saw these northern men as fundamentally different, a sort of superior class of soldier compared to others in India. This idea, this belief that they were a natural martial race would shape the regiment's entire identity for the next 100 years.
Every legendary unit has that one moment, that one crisis that truly forges its identity. For the 4th Punjab Infantry, that crisis exploded in 1857. It was the Indian Mutiny, a massive rebellion against British rule that just set the whole subcontinent on fire. And this was the moment that would transform the regiment from a simple frontier force into true imperial legends.
1,000 miles. Just let that sink in. When the mutiny broke out, the regiment was ordered to march from the frontier all the way to Delhi. They covered 1,000 miles on foot through the absolute brutal heat of an Indian summer. It was an incredible feat of endurance, and it was a powerful statement of their loyalty at a time when much of the army was in open revolt.
And believe it or not, that grueling march was just the warm-up. They were thrown right into the most desperate, most critical battles of the mutiny, the siege of Delhi, the relief of Lucknow. In these bloody, brutal fights for survival, the regiment's discipline and their loyalty were absolutely decisive. They helped the British turn the tide of the entire war.
To give you a sense of just how ferocious this fighting was, look no further than the assault on the Sukandar Bagh in Lucknow. Fighting side by side with Scottish Highlanders, the 4th Punjab Infantry stormed this fortified garden, and in the carnage that followed, 2,000 defenders were killed. It was a brutal, bloody victory that cemented their reputation as one of the Empire's most ruthless and effective units.
So after the mutiny, the regiment's prestige just skyrocketed. And like any institution that's been around for a while, its name began to change. And these weren't just boring administrative updates. They were like a roadmap of its evolving history, reflecting new battle honors and a whole new status within the British Indian Army.
Okay, so this timeline really shows you that whole journey. They start out as the 4th Punjab Infantry. By 1903, check this out, they're the 57th Wilde's Rifles, named after that legendary commander from the mutiny we talked about. And as the years go on, you can see them being absorbed into these bigger formations, which eventually leads to their final name in the modern Pakistan Army. So the names changed, sure, but that core identity, that stayed put.
Now, while their roots were on the northwest frontier, this regiment wasn't going to stay put for long. They pretty quickly became one of the key tools of British imperial power. They were the Empire's problem solvers, deployed wherever British interests were challenged, proving they could fight pretty much anywhere,
far beyond the mountains of Afghanistan.
I mean, just let this sink in for a moment. For almost 100 years, being at war was, well, it was the normal condition for these guys. On top of the constant fighting on the northwest frontier, they were thrown into the two biggest, most destructive wars in all of human history.
And look at this list. It's like a world tour of conflict. They were sent to China for the Boxer Rebellion, to the mud-soaked trenches of France in World War I, to the jungles of East Africa and the deserts of Iraq and North Africa in World War II. This wasn't just a frontier force anymore, no way. This was a global expeditionary unit, and it's proof of just how much the British Empire relied on its Indian soldiers to hold the whole thing together.
And then everything changed. 1947. The British Empire in India was gone, followed by the violent, chaotic partition of the subcontinent. For the regiment, this was without a doubt the most profound change in its entire history. After a century of loyalty to a British monarch thousands of miles away, these soldiers would now swear a new oath to a new nation, Pakistan.
This chart really breaks down that shift perfectly. The allegiance? Totally changed, from a foreign crown to their own new nation. The mission? Changed too, from defending an empire to defending their own homeland. But what's so fascinating is what they kept. That proud nickname, Piffers, that stayed. The core symbol, their bugle badge, was carried right over. It's like they were carrying the roots of their past into a completely new future.
And that brings us right up to the present day. Because this story didn't just end in 1947. The legacy of this incredible unit is still alive and kicking, woven into the very fabric of the modern Pakistan Army. It really shows you how traditions can adapt and survive, even long after the world that created them has completely vanished.
And that nickname we've mentioned, Piffer, it is so much more than just a name. It's a living, breathing link all the way back to the Punjab Irregular Force of 1851. So, to call yourself a Piffer today is to claim membership in a 170-year-old brotherhood, one that was defined by this complex, incredible history of service on the frontier. You know, if you want to understand this entire story in a single image, just look at their modern badge. It tells you everything. It keeps that historic stringed bugle. That's the direct link to its British and Frontier Force past. But right inside it, a new element is added, an Arabic character, reflecting its new identity in the Army of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. It's the past and the present, fused together perfectly.
So it all comes down to this question, right? The story of this one regiment shows us that identity is, well, it's complicated. It's layered. A legacy that was created to serve an empire can be adapted, it can be transformed, and it can be given a whole new meaning by a nation that was born from that empire's end. It's a powerful reminder that history is never really over. It just finds new ways to keep on living.